Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Paramahansa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parivajikacharya, Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 29th day of May, 2024 in San Diego, reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We're in Chapter 8, Attaining the Attaining the Supreme. Text number 10, on page 354. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranam abhishya samyak satam param purusham upaiti divyam priyanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti divyam. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham abhaiti divyam. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti divyam. Purusham upaiti divyam. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti divyam. Anyone else? Go ahead. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti divyam. Tapas. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti divyam. Goodbye. Prayanakale manasachalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak satam padam purusham upaiti divyam. No one online, I assume. Huh? Okay. Prayanakale, at the time of death. Manasa, by the mind. Achalena, without its being deviated. Bhaktya, in full devotion. Yuktaha, engaged. Yoga balena, by the power of mystic yoga. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Bruvoho, the two eyebrows. Madhye, between. Pranam, the life air. Avesha, establishing. Samyak, completely. Saha, he, tam, that, param, transcendental, purusham, personality of Godhead, upaiti, achieves, divyam, in the spiritual kingdom. Translation. One who, at the time of death, fixes his life air between the eyebrows, and by the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. In this verse, it is clearly stated that at the time of death, the mind must be fixed in devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those practiced in yoga, it is recommended that they raise the life force between the eyebrows to the Agya chakra. The practice of Shat Chakra Yoga, involving meditation on the 6 chakras, is suggested here. A pure devotee does not practice such yoga, but because he is always engaged in Krishna consciousness, at death he can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead by His grace. This is explained in verse 14. The particular use of the word yoga balena is significant in this verse because without practice of yoga, whether Shat Chakra Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, one cannot come to this transcendental state of being at the time of death. One cannot suddenly remember the Supreme Lord at death. One must have practiced some yoga system, especially the system of Bhakti Yoga. Since one's mind at death is very disturbed, one should practice the transcendence through yoga during one's life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, suddenly we're back to a little bit of the Ashtanga Yoga from the 6th chapter. Krishna is talking about fixing the mind between the eyebrows and Manasachara Bhaktya Yukto Yoga Balena. He is talking about bhakti here, but it's kind of a mixture of bhakti and meditative yoga. And in the next verse, it'll be even more so. So basically, there's kind of an intersection of all the yogas. The basic principle is to control the mind, fix it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and come to the point where you're always thinking of the Lord at every moment, because we don't know when that last moment is actually going to be. So that's a central principle to both Bhakti Yoga and this meditative yoga. But for us, again, the practice of Bhakti Yoga as taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is most practical. I don't think anyone here really... Does anyone here try to concentrate the mind between the eyebrows? I don't. Certainly not going to do that in the big kirtan, right? Or how about the japa? No, you're concentrating on the sound. You're concentrating on the sound. And the whole point in Krishna consciousness is that your object of meditation, that you're trying to fix the mind on, is all attractive. It's not some mandala, it's not some white light, it's not some point on the wall or whatever you want to think. It's something that, it's not something at all, it's a person, which is really what is attractive. There's a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that I finally memorized this year. Let's see if I got it. It's a short one, but it's very important for us because it analyzes the word Krishna and explains why that word is a manifestation of the Param Brahma, of the Supreme Absolute Truth. So it says, Krishna bhuvachika kshabdo nashta nirvati vachikaha tayaraikyam param brahma Krishna itchabidiyate. So in Sanskrit, it's a very scientific language. Every sound is meant to have an effect. You may not know that the very combination of letters ND is said to evoke ananda. It causes bliss, especially if it's integrated into a verse about Krishna. So there's a verse. Let's see if I think the Nanda Nanda Napadada Binda Yosyandamana Makadanda Binda Basindaba Padamasauki Sambadam Nandiyanta Bidiyam Mamanasham. You hear all the NDs in there? So it's a very wonderful verse. I think it's Rupa Goswami. Nanda Nandana, O Nanda Nandana. O Krishna, son of Nanda. Nanda Nandana Padada Bindayo, your lotus feet. Padada Binda. Adavinda is a word for lotus. Padada Bindayo. Syandamana Makadanda Bindaba. Syanda is when it's trickling. From those the lotuses of your feet are trickling Syandamana Makadanda Bindaba, little drops of Makaranda. Makaranda is the nectar of flowers that is then taken by the bees and turned into honey, concentrated into honey. So it's sweet by nature. So Nanda Nandana Padada Bin, oh Nanda Nandana, from your wonderful lotus feet from the wonderful lotuses of your feet is trickling this makaranda, this honey, the bindava. But they're not actually, binda means drops. But those bindavas are actually sindava. You know, sindava means ocean. The drops, they're not drops, they're actually oceans of the highest bliss, the highest happiness. Sindava padamasaukya sampadam, that are enriched with the highest nectar, the highest happiness. Sindava padamasaukya sampadam, nanda yanda vidiham mamanisham. May my heart ever experience the bliss of service to your lotus feet. That's what we're praying for at every moment. Bindava sindava padamasaukisam nandayantu. It's a verb, it's a request. Please delight me by allowing me to taste that nectarian beverage of the nectar of your lotus feet by service. That's the implication, by serving your lotus feet. And then also, this, I know you don't know this one, the double L combination is meant to evoke the conjugal ras. Who knew? So, that's the first statement. Ballava are the coward men, lalana are the wives, you see? And ullala, they're trembling in ecstasy because the rasa dance is about to begin. Ullala ballava lalana dhara pallava, how do I say it? Their lips are ullala lalana pallava chumbano le lasitam. Krishna himself is feeling ecstasy by being kissed by the lips of these gopis when they're coming for the rasa dance. This rasa dance is about to start. Now me, I praise, I glorify. So Malli Malyam, all these L's, get the L's. He's wearing this Mallika garland of very fragrant flowers, you know. Mallika Malyam, Harim, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hare. So Naumi Samalli Malyam Hadami Hil Halisakol Pullam. Another word, I don't know what the meaning is the deep meaning of the rasa dance is said to be a halisaka. It's a festival. Utpullam means it's starting to blossom, it's just beginning. Halisakol Pullam, but yet all the words are the double L's. Ullala ballava lanada dada pallava chummaneno lasatam naumi samalli malyam hadami halisakol Pullam. On the other hand, you get, you know, verses about the Nrsimhadev, Lord Nrsimhadev killing the demons, and it's all, I don't happen to know one, you know, chindi, chindi, kata, 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 chindi, you know, chopping them up, tearing them apart. So the Sanskrit language is very full of onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeias are words that sound like what they mean. We have many of them in English. Splash, you know, when the water is coming, you know. Bubble, 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 you know, like that. So in Sanskrit you have many of those. And some of them, the obvious origins of English words in the Sanskrit. Nama, hello, you know, name. Then tumalo means tumult or tumultuous. And there's many like that. You can see the obvious. So, back to our verses here. So these two verses, Krishna is again just giving a quick summary of how the yogis are supposed to be situated, you know, thinking of Krishna at the time of death. But in Bhakti Yoga, we don't know when that time will come. You know, the yogis plan for that, and then they're all set, you know, and they maybe even die voluntarily, you know, when they're really absorbed. But we don't do that. You know, we're simply serving Krishna until the final notice comes, and then we do everything we can to stay absorbed in thought of Krishna. And for devotees, practically it means when the notice is there, to be in the company of devotees, chanting and chanting the holy name. Prabhupada showed by his example. He always had a kirtan going, you know, those last weeks in Vrindavan, you know. Bhardraj was there, or somebody was chanting. And then at the final thing, the whole room was filled with devotees chanting the holy name. And Prabhupada departed very peacefully, ecstatically. So this is the basic point Krishna is making here. You have to somehow arrange your life. You remember my little lesson there? But I pointed out 5, 6, and 7 in this chapter, where Krishna says, I'll just read the English. Whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. This is no doubt. So he's the same theme here. And then this general principle, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Now that's a very sobering thought. It means that, we have to really be careful about what we're thinking about. We want to cultivate more and more, so Krishna thought fills up our consciousness. And that's why Krishna consciousness, it's a total program. All your activities, as far as possible, should be acts of devotional service, so that you're always thinking of Krishna. He's the beneficiary. And Krishna is not just a passive, actor here. He's not a stone. He's a person. When he sees that you're trying to do that, he helps you. He helps you. He gives you the proper association. He arranges things in your life. I mean, I can look back on my life, and in the form of kind of a crisis, a health crisis, which kind of knocked out all the things I was, anyway, this created a situation where I was laid up for a month, and I came out of that, and I was looking for a way to get my health back, and at that time I was interested in India, chiefly through music. Ravi Shankar, and he was one of the pioneers of bringing Indian music to America, and I was very interested in that. I was always a musician. And so I said, well, let me try this Hatha yoga. I've heard this yoga can be, and I ended up getting into yoga circles. And from there, hey, why don't we go down to the Hare Krishna temple? I said, okay. But it was, and chanting mantra, I'll tell you just one other story, because this was really important development. In the 60s and the 70s, there's a book going around called The Way of a Pilgrim. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of that at this point. But it was I think it was fictional, or it was based on history, but it was fictionalized, of a Russian Christian guy who was very curious about one passage in the Bible. And it says that one should pray ceasingly, without ceasing. And he said, how do you do that? Because you have to do so many other things. So he went to this priest, that priest, no one could really help him. Then he went to someone called a starets. A starets is like what we would call a real spiritual master, someone who is advanced, who is experienced. So he said, okay, here's what you do. You take the Jesus prayer, which I learned. I was not a Christian, but the principle is the same, and that the Jesus prayer was, Lord Jesus, Son of God, have mercy upon me, a sinner. And so now you go home and I guess give him a rosary or something, and you chant that prayer for like 3 hours a day, And so, and come back in a week if you're able to do it. So I said, yeah, I did it. At first it was pretty hard. My jaw got stiff. But eventually I did it. And now what do I do? Okay, now you go and do 6 hours. Okay, it was kind of hard. You did. And now, and so he came back after that most of the day taking. And so what are you feeling? Yeah, even when I stop, it's still going on. It's still going on in my sleep, That's the idea, So what happened is he kind of took sannyas. He put a backpack on, and he just started going out and chanting that wherever he went. And he had all his experiences, and he was becoming a preacher and this and that, basically. And eventually he was challenged because he became kind of famous. And then these kind of aristocracy, young, 18 to 20-year-olds, they said, let's see if we can go seduce this guy. He's supposed to be a big priest, So they sent some girl, to his cabin. He was there and knocked on the door. Oh, can you help me? She comes in, and he understands what's going on, And so what he did was I think he stabbed his finger, so it was all this pain. So there was no, it ruined the mood, So he was there, chanting, Lord Jesus Christ. And so she couldn't do anything, and she went off. So he passed that test, Anyway, so eventually the story goes on, and he does fall down, and it's a whole thing. But just the idea, the principle of chanting like that was introduced there, and then when I met the devotee, I said, "Oh yeah, this was there in the Christian, thing too." So I took to it, quick. It was something I could relate to. Krishna's mercy, all those things. So the Bhagavad Gita is going here, and it's giving us this central principle of constant remembrance. The solution here in text 7 was therefore, since whatever you remember at the time of death is going to determine your next life, and you should remember me, therefore, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without a doubt. So he's not recommending there to sit down and meditate like this, you know. He's saying just whatever you're doing. And that was Prabhupada's principle in founding the movement. I listened to so many tapes, and I remember listening to him say, yes, we're simply creating duties for them so that they'll be able to remember Krishna all day. You know, okay, put out the back to God. I mean, I even go out on the street for 4 hours a day. Oh, how could you forget Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa? But the principle is there. And if you recall, I think I quoted this in one of the recent classes. There's a verse, Smartavyak satatam Vishnu vismartavyo najatu chit sava vidi nishedaksur eteyoreva kinkara. That always remember Vishnu. When Prabhupada gives the translation of this verse, which he quotes every so often in his books, the translation it starts out, Krishna is the original form of Vishnu. Because this verse, it says, Smartatam Vishnu. Okay, when it says Vishnu, it means Krishna. That's the idea. Always remember Krishna. So always remember Krishna, and never forget him. Vismartavya Jatachit. Sarva Vidi, all the instructions in the Shastra, the do's and the don'ts. The do's are the Vidi and the don'ts are Nisheda. And probably the rules and regulations. Rules is do this, the regulations don't do this, do that. That's the way with the 4 regs. Don't do this, you know. So, Sabha Vidi Nisheda Aksura, Edeyor Eva Kinkara. Kinkara means the humble servant. So everything that's there in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, in the Bhagavad Gita, in terms of how you should act, what you should do with your senses, your mind, and your intelligence, are servants of these two. They're trying to help us to remember Krishna and not forget him. And so when you're always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him, you're ready. You're ready for that final exam. And then you can be peaceful. Not only that, but Krishna is giving you so much natural happiness in your heart. Everything you're doing which is service, is a source of happiness, especially glorification and kirtan like that, you know. So that's the idea, and the Bhagavad Gita will, you know, what's the it's important verse, the end of the 9th chapter, near the end of the 18th chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji bham namaskaru. Think of me all the time, become my devotee, and you can't think of him all the time unless you become his devotee. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji, sacrifice. Sacrifice what? Sacrifice your own illusory attraction for sense gratification, you see, and simply become interested in Krishna's sense gratification. I bring this up periodically in classes. There's a wonderful, not even a verse, it's a Sanskrit phrase from the Sandarbhas by Jiva Goswami that encapsulates the essence of the whole process of bhakti. It's quoted in the purport in the 2nd canto. I think it's 2.3.10. It's the famous verse of Kama Sarva Kama Vamoksha Kama Udadati. Whether you are free of all material desire or full of all material desires or want liberation, everyone should perform intense devotional service unto the Supreme Person to make your life successful. So in that purport, Prabhupada cites this little phrase from the Shat-sandarbhas. I haven't been able to locate which one. But it goes like this, very easy to understand. Bhajaniya Padama Purusha Sukha Matra Swasukadvam. This is the essence of our whole practice. Bhajaniya means worshipable. Padama Purusha, Supreme Person. The worshipable Supreme Person is Krishna. Sukha, happiness matra, only the happiness of that Supreme Person. Swasukadvam. We should, the source of our happiness, we should only take our pleasure and our happiness in contributing to the happiness of the Supreme Person. That's it. If you know that verse, Anyavilashada Shunyam Jnana Karma Jnana, it's the same idea. This is the verse near the beginning of Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu that defines what pure devotional service is. And what it means is very simply that only act in such a way that is not motivated by desire for jnana, which means liberation, you know, impersonal, or karma, ordinary sense gratification, or siddhis, yogic siddhis. No. The only motivation should be favorable devotional service for Krishna. Is this pleasing to Krishna? Is this what I'm supposed to do now for the pleasure of Krishna? You know, that thought can govern our everyday life. Yes, now is the time to take rest. That will please Krishna. Otherwise, I'll be spaced out tomorrow morning. So it's time to take rest. You know, now is the time to study the Shastra. Now is the time to go to the arti. Now is the time to do my service, my duties. You know, and if I do that, I know that's pleasing to Krishna. And especially if I remember him while I do that service. And it's easier to, why am I doing what I'm doing? Oh, this is Krishna's service. That's the whole point of these temples. How can you forget Krishna if you walk in this temple? Everywhere you look, the walls, the wonderful architecture, of course, the deities, the sound vibration, you know, there's the whole thing, all the senses, right? And I remember I was attracted so much to the fragrance, you know, the incense was always burning in the old days. Now we don't burn it as much. Anyway, that's the idea, and that makes it practical. You don't have to become expert at sitting for hours and hours, you know, and wrestling with the mind. No. You sit for, you know, chanting japa, we have that period. That's our most meditative period. But everything connects you to Krishna. It reminds you of Krishna. And Krishna is all attractive. So the more you think of Krishna, the more attracted you'll be, and attracted away from Maya. That's the whole thing. Wake up. Purification. So here he's giving a little taste of, okay, we're back to a little discussion here for a couple of verses of meditative yoga. But the same principle, bhakti ayukto yoga, by the strength of bhakti. It's meditative, but it's still bhakti. All right, no discussion, we can move on. Yadaksharam veda vido vedanti vishanti yadhyata yovita raga Yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena papakshe. Persons who are learned in the Vedas, who utter Omkar, and who are great sages in the renounced order, enter into Brahman. Desiring such perfection, one practices celibacy. I shall now briefly explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna has recommended to Arjuna the practice of Shat Chakra Yoga. Shat Chakra means 6 chakras, moving the energy up the chakras, in which one places the air of life between the eyebrows. Taking it for granted that Arjuna might not know how to practice Shat Chakra Yoga, the Lord explains the process in the following verses. The Lord says that Brahman, although one without a second, has various manifestations and features. Especially for the impersonalists, the Akshara, or Omkar, the syllable Om, is identical with Brahman. Krishna here explains the impersonal Brahman into which the renounced order of sages enter. In the Vedic system of knowledge, students from the very beginning are taught to vibrate Om and learn of the ultimate impersonal Brahman by living with the spiritual master in complete celibacy. In this way, they realize these 2 features of Brahman. This practice is very essential for the student's advancement in spiritual life, but at the moment, such brahmachari, unmarried celibate life is not at all possible. The social construction of the world has changed so much that there is no possibility of one's practicing celibacy from the beginning of student life. Throughout the world, there are many institutions for different departments of knowledge, but there is no recognized institution where students can be educated in the brahmachari principles. Unless one practices celibacy, advancement in spiritual life is very difficult. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya has announced, according to these scriptural injunctions for this age of Kali, that in this age no process of realizing the Supreme is possible except the chanting of the holy names of Lord Kṛṣṇa. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Now, just to make it clear for those who maybe I forgot this word reminding us of this, that this mantra, actually I'm going to try to resurrect this. There's a whole wonderful article that is written in the Back to Godhead about the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra. Quoting from the Shastra this way, glorifying the mantra and everything. And I'm going to try to resurrect that. But one of the most important understandings is this is not something that Lord Chaitanya created, This is coming from the Upanishads. And there's one Upanishad called Kali Santarana Upanishad. Can anyone figure out what that means? Kali Santarana? Upanishad that delivers you from Kali Yuga. Santarana, like Tarane, you have to say. So, In this Upanishad, there's these two verses that are foundational for our movement here. Lord Chaitanya would quote them. The first verse is Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. The second one is Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam Natak Purataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. So he says these 16 names, Shodashaka Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. Nashanam is to destroy the ills and evils of Kali Yuga, the difficulties, the Kalmasha is all this. Natak Purataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. You may search throughout all the Vedas, but you will not find a more effective means than chanting this mantra. So, this is why we're chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa. That's the most powerful mantra, the Maha Mantra. And one thing that sometimes we lose sight of is that we have to try to really focus our attention as closely as possible on the sound of the mantra. This very sound of the mantra, and then you can feel the potency of the mantra even more. Otherwise, there's a certain element of lack of focus, of inattention, which we know is an offense. Because the mind, the material mind, is always looking for newer and newer stimuli for enjoyment, So here you have this mantra, you heard it a million times before, and the mind is saying, all right already, I heard that one before. So the mind is starting to wander here and there, you see, if you let it go. Especially in sadhana stage, sadhana bhakti. So you have to consciously focus the mind. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa. Now I once read this, I'm going to try to find this quote again, but from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that one of the benefits of chanting and dancing is that you can better hear each syllable of the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra. It's usually much slower than chanting, right? Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare. Sometimes we get kirtans that go that fast, but I won't go there. But but the idea is that, and it's designed for absorption, because the body's moving there, the drums are helping, all of that helps you to focus, if you allow it to, better on each syllable. And being, just as a mantra, not even what does it mean, no, just hearing every syllable of that mantra, you'll find it's more fascinating, more attractive. You can really feel the attraction of the sound, and you're feeling the attraction of Krishna. And sometimes you forget that, and you get into kind of a mode of half attention or whatever as you're chanting. But really, to make that effort of focus, and that's the foundational stage of chanting nicely. All right. Any other discussion on these points? A couple of verses here about meditative yoga. And he's going to continue. Sarvadvarani sangyamya mano hridhi nirudyacha murdhyadhyatmanak pranam astito yoga dharanam. More yoga. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements. Closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head, one establishes himself in yoga. Purport. To practice yoga as suggested here, one first has to close the doors of all sense enjoyment. This practice is called pratyahara, or withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. The sense organs for acquiring knowledge, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and touch, should be fully controlled and should not be allowed to engage in self-gratification. In this way, the mind focuses on the supersoul in the heart, and the life force is raised to the top of the head. In the 6th chapter, this process is described in detail. But as mentioned before, this practice is not practical in this age. The best process is Krishna consciousness. If one is always able to fix his mind on Krishna in devotional service, it is very easy for him to remain in an undisturbed transcendental trance or in samadhi. Yeah. All right, let's go on, because there's a little more of this yoga. And then there's verses that are often quoted. Om Ekakaksharam Brahma Vyaharan Mamanusmaran Yakpriyati Chajandeham Sayati Paramangatim After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. Purport. It is clearly stated here that Om, Brahman, and Lord Kṛṣṇa are not different. The impersonal sound of Krishna is Om. But the sound Hare Kṛṣṇa contains Om. The chanting of the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra is clearly recommended for this age. So if one quits his body at the end of life chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare, he certainly reaches one of the spiritual planets, according to the mode of his practice. The devotees of Krishna enter the Krishna planet, Goloka Vrindavan. For the personalist, there are also innumerable other planets known as Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, whereas the impersonalists remain in the Brahma Jyoti. So, you may not know, there's a very interesting interpretation of Om, I think given by Jiva Goswami, again, one of the Sandarbhas. This is quoted from the purport in the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Om, it's actually a combination of A, U, and M. Om. So he says the A is Radha, the U is Krishna, and the M is a living entity. Interesting. Om, Om. So it's actually another way of meditating on Radha Krishna. Yeah, so Om comes up. Krishna says, of all the syllables in the Vedas, I am Om, like that. And Om is important. We chant. In Bhagavatam is filled with that. In the prayers of the residents of Jambudvip, Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya Namaste, just like that. And what is it? Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mahavibhutipataye. Is that what you're thinking of? See, he knows. Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mahanubhavaya Mahavibhutipataye Sakala Sapata Padavidinakada Kadakamana Kudmalo Palata Chadanada Vindapanama Panama Yugula Paramama. This is a meditation on Sankirtan in the spiritual world, sitting there surrounded by devotees, and the devotees are massaging his lotus feet. This is, I think, Chitraketu chants this one in the 6th canto. Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya, all Supreme Person, Mahanubhavaya, all most powerful one, Mahavibhutipataye, you full of so many glories and powers. And Mahapurushaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya, Mahanubhavaya, Mahavibhutipataye, Sakala Satvata Padavidindikada Kadakamala Kudmaloba. So Sakala Satvata, the Sattvatas are the devotees. So he's surrounded by the devotees, and with their lotus bud hands, they're massaging his lotus feet, you see. The Kudmaloba bud like Kudmaloba, massaging, fondling his lotus feet. Sakala Padama Padameshtin Namaste, I offer my obeisances. There's a meditation like that. There's a devotee, you probably know, maybe some of you know, named Narada Bino Jivana Sudormani Rasa Madhuripura. Madhuripura, the Kirtaniya, young boy. He lives up in Laguna. Yeah, he's an old friend, because I knew his father from way back in New York, Palada Priya. And I had some nice interaction with him in Mayapur one year, where he was staying at his father has one of the, I don't know what you call them, apartments in Mayapur. And so I was going in Mayapur, and I didn't, at a certain point, I needed a place to stay. So he said, you can stay in my place. I didn't know that his son was going to be there also. He was about, I don't know, 18 max at that time. And so we had a nice interaction. I taught him this art of chanting, Sanskrit. He was very into that because he's a great drummer and kirtaniya. And so this is one of the verses that I taught him, It's not even a verse. And so whenever we see each other, oh, let's do it, But this is what the Bhagavatam is. Now, you remember the third verse of Bhagavatam. The first verse is really official. It's defining the subject matter. Is the Supreme Personality of God, the one who enlightened Brahma, the one of the source of the birth and the maintenance and the destruction of this whole world. All official, okay, this is about Supreme Personality of God. The next verse is all about the book, the Bhagavatam. Dharma project the kaita. Here in this book we kick out all cheating dharmas, okay. It's only understood by those pure at heart. Nimatsaranam satam vejam vastava matta vastu. The vastava vastu is the ground of being, is the essence of what exists. That's the vastu is something, and vastava is the existing thing. So Shivadam, reading this gives all good fortune to the reader. Shivadam. Vasta Vastu Shivadam Tapatayon Mulinam, and uproots the threefold miseries. Well, what a great book, it keeps going on. Anyone who reads this book and listens to it with real faith and devotion, Shushu Shavo, will have the Lord manifest in his heart, So what's the need for any other scripture? King Vapararishwara, so it's all about the glories of the Bhagavatam. And the third verse is a nectar verse, It's an injunction to hear the Bhagavatam. Nagamakal galitam palam shakamakaram mita drabasam nitam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam mohodaho rasikabu vibhavuka. This Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of all the tree of the Vedic literature. Nagamakal galitam palam, it's the desire tree of the Vedic literature. Kalpa galitam, and then the immortal, the word for word meanings. This translation of one word there is more famous than the verse itself. This galitam, this Bhagavatam is like a fruit, the ripened fruit. It's semi-soft and easily swallowable. That's in the word by word meanings. You got to read those word by word. Galitam pulam, it's a fruit. Galitam shukamukad. It was touched by the lips of Shuka. Now, this is where we learn that a parrot can make a fruit sweeter by pecking it. You ever hear that? I never experienced it, but that's it. So Shukadeva Goswami has spoken this and made it even sweeter than it was. Shukamukad Amrita Dravasamvitam is full of all kinds of nectar, And Drava, that's the semi-soft and easily swallowable. But the Bhagavatam, you should drink it. Don't read it, drink it. But the Bhagavatam, Rasam Aliyam. Now this Aliyam, I didn't realize what it meant, because I'm always working on the books, and do we need a refinement here? Aliyam, we're going to read in a couple of verses here, that this material world is Dukha Aliyam Ashashvatam. Aliyam means an abode. And he's warning, this material world is an abode of misery. And it's temporary, Even if you think you got it together, it won't stay. So that's part of the misery. So I say, how is it aliyam, rasam aliyam? An abode of juice, that's okay. But the translation was up to the point of liberation and beyond. I couldn't figure out. So it's not aliyam, it's a-layam. See? Just like Brahma Bhuvana Loka, up to Brahma Loka. It's a-Brahma. It's a Sanskrit meaning of this prefix a, up to the point of, or including. So, up to the point of liberation and beyond. The goal here is not liberation. That's the point, that you go beyond liberation, which is to the spiritual world. That includes liberation. But just liberation means Brahma Jyoti. So, Mohodaho Rasika, again and again, hear it, O Rasikas, or those who are relishing the Rasa Bhakti, you see. So this is a nectar verse, and prefacing and foretelling so many wonderful other verses in the Bhagavatam that are instructive and at the same time full of nectar, but simply describing Krishna's beautiful pastimes and qualities and so many things. So the Bhagavatam itself is our means. It's not only informing us and enlightening us with knowledge, but it's also the means of transcendence and achieving the highest realm. So we should really carefully read the Bhagavatam and learn how to chant it. If you're interested, you see some verse, you can't figure out how to chant it, let me know, and we'll get you the meter. Like the prayers of the gopis. So nice, They're at home doing their chores, but they're thinking about Krishna. Bama baha katabama kapolo valgita bodadara patavenam. Komalanguli badashita magam gopiri yati yattamakunda. So they're describing, they're at home, he's in the forest, and they're visualizing him. And they're hearing. said, Rāma Baho. Now I am a flute player. I played the flute long before I heard about Krishna. So I know this is how you play the flute. And I learned, But if you have, Krishna has different size flutes. He has little venus, he has vanshis, and then he has long ones, I forget what they're called, really long. So there's visualizing he's playing a real long flute, because they had, on his left cheek, he's got his left shoulder. There's one like this, you see? Vama Bahukata Vama Kapolo. And he's moving his eyebrows very nice. And so as he's playing this, the goddesses of fortune, the demigoddesses are flying in the airplanes with their husbands. And they hear the flute, they say, oh, let's go down, listen, let's go. So they're coming down to listen, and they become embarrassed, because they're being attracted to Krishna. Whoever hears that flute, if it's a female, they become attracted. So they're a little embarrassed because the husbands are right there. But Vishwanath Chakravarti, he expands the meaning, and the husbands are also embarrassed because they're also becoming attracted to Krishna voice. Anyway, it's just a pure delight. I remember when I first was editing this back in the 80s, I said, oh, this is what I got to memorize these, and I took them out and I printed them out and learned them. So that the Bhagavatam provides, the Bhagavad Gita is itself full of nectar, and the Bhagavad is overflowing nectar. So where were we? I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away. Was it 12? 14 already. Wow. Okay. So 14 is quite substantial. I think this is a very often quoted verse. So I'm going to leave this one for next week, and I can end with a couple of poems. I don't have any poems yet. So, what do we pray for? Well, we learn from Lord Chaitanya in the Shikshastika, Nadanang, first he says what I'm not praying for. Nadanang, nasundarim kapitang vajagadishikamaye mama janmani shade bhavada bhakti rahoitikitvahi. Wealth and women, followers, the fruits of mundane piety, liberation from this world of limitless anxiety. For me, O Lord, these common goals have not the slightest worth. Let me serve you purely now and in each future birth. So, following this mood, Rupa Goswami has written this one of many prayers like this, where he says, Pujanga the Prachandakas Buddha the Kanda Chudankore Nirangasha Bhujanga the Prachandakas Buddha the Kanda Chudankore Nisanga the Rantada, I forget the Sanskrit. Patanga the Duitustati Vanakuti the Keli Prihe Paras Buddha to Me Mohustwai Mukunda Shuddha Rati. Shuddha Rati is pure love. It says you okay. Bhujanga to Prachandaga, Bhujanga to Bhujanga. I thought I had this one ready, loaded up. Oh yeah, you wear the best of crests, a crown of perfect peacock plumes. Your dancing glances stun the bees, meandering midst the blooms. You relish love play in a cottage by Kalindi's shore. O Krishna, may pure love for you be mine forevermore. Now here's a prayer where he prays that the lotus of flower of Krishna's beautiful face will ever grow in the lake of his heart. Smitaduchi makadanda syandi vaktaravindam tavapada padahangsan vishtagandham mukunda vidichita pashupali neta saranga rangam mamadidiyata dhage sangamangi korotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which is the air their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. Hare Kṛṣṇa. All right, so why don't we adjourn on time this time? We don't have to run around. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bol. This is the problem when I get so many devotees, because our numbers have doubled over yesterday. I kind of get a little bit deviated, but basically it's all meditation on Krishna. All right, so we'll begin on Monday with text 14. Of what? Of the Bhagavatam? Yeah. That's a big recording project. Yeah, I didn't do the whole Bhagavatam. I did sections of it. I did a little thing on the second canto, and at Janardhan's request, I recorded the 4 essential verses of Bhagavatam with the Sanskrit and the purports and everything. And of course, I have the whole 10th canto. That I have. I don't know if that's what you're looking for. But no, I haven't recorded the whole Bhagavatam. That's a major project. I don't know.